In 1990, D.C. was a struggling city of 606,000 citizens. Despite $4 billion in taxes and federal grants, only Alaska collected more tax revenue per capita. 19% of the city's public housing was sitting empty. In a 1989 expose entitled "The Worst City Government in America," outlined the ways in which funding was being misused or going unaccounted for. As a result of high taxes and shitty services, D.C. was seeing many of its wealthier families begin to move to suburbs, and the overall population of the city was declining. On January 18, 1990, the three-time elected mayor, Marion Barry, was arrested in a sting operation at the Vista International Hotel. The FBI had been investigating Barry for drug use since 1988. His side chick at the time, Hazel Rashida Moore, was an FBI informant, and on that fateful January day, she invited the mayor to smoke crack with her before sex.
Mayor Marion Barry was still drawing cheers in his neighborhood even after his arrest last night on charges of using crack. In an FBI undercover operation, sources say former model Rashida Moore, described as a cooperating government witness, allegedly lured the mayor to a rendezvous for romance and drugs. While a videotape rolled in this Washington hotel, U.S. attorneys and FBI agents watched over a hidden closed-circuit camera as the mayor allegedly gave more money for cocaine. Unknown to Barry, she then obtained cocaine from an undercover officer standing by on the scene.
The scandal became a national embarrassment. The black mayor of Chocolate City caught smoking crack at the height of the crack problem with a woman who wasn't his wife. Barry called it a continuation of the political lynching and excesses of the Justice Department, before appearing in church to apologize and atone with his wife Effie, and then a public drop-off at rehab. Barry continued to serve as mayor through his arrest and trial, and even ran against Hilda Mason, his former mentor, for an at-large seat on the city council. He lost the election, and his wife left him in the same month, shortly before he was sentenced to 6 months in federal prison due to being found guilty on one possession charge. Barry's jury was largely black and disputed actual facts of the case, like whether or not a bag of crack was crack. While the middle-aged and older black jurors were more supportive of Barry, the 4 youngest black women voted most often for convictions. Barry quickly served his 6 months, and by 1992 was running for a city council seat under the slogan, "He may not be perfect, but he's perfect for D.C., winning 70% of the votes. If you need even more proof that the city still loved Barry, in January 1991 it was reported that the little people gave nickels, dimes, and quarters to buy him a $25,000 Chrysler. While Barry had been in jail, Sharon Pratt Kelly, a Democrat and former DNC treasurer, served as mayor. She immediately slashed the city employment payroll and mandated unpaid furloughs and wage freezes, and was exposed by the Washington Post for spending $14,000 on a makeup artist with city funds. It's important to note that at the time she was criticized for this expense, Kelly was pushing for D.C. statehood, and the city overall faced criticism as being one more failed socialist experiment. Both her makeup budget and a push for statehood destroyed her political capital. House of Representatives delegate and former Equal Employment Opportunity Commission head Eleanor Holmes Norton introduced the debate for D.C. statehood in 1992, which led to a successful House vote in 1993. The Washington Post reported that Republicans, who rejected D.C. statehood, had described the city as one-party rule, massive dependency, hellish crime, and unrelenting scandal. Those same Republicans wouldn't admit that D.C., where residents are taxed but have no representation in Congress, has a larger population than Wyoming and Vermont, which would give the mostly black area a House representative and 2 senators. Noted one journalist, "This city is also the U.S. Capitol, the seat of this nation's government. It's a historical irony that in 1994, more than 200 years after the American Revolution against British taxation without representation, an analogous situation exists in Washington, D.C. But as we all know, the rush for D.C. statehood failed. When Marion Barry entered the mayoral primaries against Kelly and Councilman John Ray in May 1994, the major issue of the campaign was how candidates would cut $140 million from the city budget, as ordered by Congress. In the primaries, Barry took 47% of the votes compared to Ray's 37% and Kelly's 13%. When pressed to take a drug test, Barry said he would only do so if the other candidates did too. He then went on to win 56% of the 200,000 votes cast in the general election. Barry's victory was seen as a populist upset against the city's affluent white minority. When he was sworn in for a fourth time on January 2nd, 1995, the city was in a budgetary crisis, with a deficit between $700 million and $1 billion. Congress created a financial control board that had complete control over DC's finances and could overrule Barry's fiscal policies at any moment. In 1997, the city was rescued from financial crisis, but Mayor for Life Barry was stripped of his power over 9 district agencies, effectively ending his reign as mayor. The early years of Barry's reign had been marked by youth and job programs, outreach, and actual governing. And this is what people held on to even when his leadership was clearly flawed and failing. In nearby Virginia, Douglas Wilder began his term as the first black governor in January 1990. He notably pardoned Allen Iverson when he was in prison. He instructed state agencies and universities to divest from South Africa to help end apartheid and improve transportation. But he didn't focus on explicitly black American issues, pleasing the 77% white population. He then briefly entered the Democratic primaries for president in 1992.